Okay.
How are you, Rabbi?
Baruch Hashem. Hope everyone had an amazing week.
Baruch Hashem.
Okay, so Kitzur Shulchan Aruch, the abridged code of Jewish law, chapter 98, and we're doing the laws of Yom Tov, and we're up to number 4. Number 4. Okay, so just to get our minds back focused. So what we said is on Yom Tov we can't do malacha, we can't do any of the creative activities that we can't do on Shabbos, with an exception. So all of them apply. Yom Tov Shabbos is exactly the same, except for one category: oichel nefesh, things that we need to do in order to be able to prepare food. And then we said that once we're allowed to do them for food, we're allowed to do them for any other Yom Tov purpose. So we started to define last week, what does that mean, prepared for food or not prepared for food. So we mentioned different things. For example, spices that if you grind them before Yom Tov, they're going to lose their flavor or start losing their flavor. So those ones you're allowed to grind on Yom Tov. If it won't lose its flavor, be just as good, then better to do it before Yom Tov. Right, now we're going to give another example. Number 4. Aslavaka eitzim. Right, you can't chop wood, can't split wood. I mean, today most people don't have wood burning stoves, but we fireplaces and different things. But that was the norm, so we can't chop wood. But a filul, the shaborim biyad, even to break the wood by hand, we can't do. Vasalakat eitzim b'makim shem b'fazorim. And we can't gather wood in a place where it's scattered. So if we have like a wood shed and the wood's all piled there, you're allowed to take wood from there. But if it's scattered, you can't go around collecting it. Now, probably most people aren't going to go camping on Yom Tov, but that's probably when we would use the wood today. Hey, number 5. Awesome. We're not allowed to arrange wood on the stones, make like a bonfire type, building it up. Because, excuse me, it's like making a structure. It's like building. Because you're essentially making walls with a roof on top. So what do you do if you're going to cook on a fire? You want to make a barbecue or something with sarach shi'asa. You have to do it in an unusual way. For example, he says, so an unusual way to do the fire is you hold the wood in your hand and you put the stones underneath the wood. Right? So you put the bottom underneath the wood as opposed to putting the wood on the bottom. Similarly, when you put a pot on the stones to light a fire underneath, so you hold the pot in your hand, and put the stones under the pot. But you shouldn't put the pot on the stones, because that's also going to make the pot will become the roof of the structure of the wood and various things. Okay. Vov. That'll be the last one to do with actually cooking directly on a fire. I was a rabbi in a place called Brisbane, and actually did have a congregant who had a wood burning stove. And it actually was his hot water system as well. He had anyway, but most people today, it's the only person I actually know that in modern times has wood burning stove. So it could be relevant, but I'm sure most of us have gas or electric. Vov, ein neufchim eish You can't fan the fire with the bellows. You know, those things you sort of push down, right? The bellows that they have. At least not in the way that professionals do. So you wouldn't be able to use like a blacksmith's bellows or a baker's bellows or various things. But the smaller householders' bellows, we're lenient that people can use it, the custom, but they turn it upside down and they push it backwards. Instead of pulling inwards to make the air go out, you hold it backwards and pull upwards, and that'll but the professionals ones, I feel like they shouldn't also, even by doing it a different way, we can't do it. It's like doing weekday work. Okay, so if anyone actually has a wood burning stove or various things and it wasn't clear and they want more information, please ask now. Otherwise, we'll move on.
Rabbi, I have
Yes.
a question for you.
Yes.
I'm trying to understand what you just said. In order, if I were to go camping,
on Yom Tov,
correct, I would need a stone bottom first. Correct. Where I would put the wood on top and have that lit on top. And I could put a grate maybe 6 inches above it that would take care of boiling my water and or cooking my meat.
Yep.
Am I correct in what
yes.
I'm?
Almost. So
okay.
if we're building this, it's not really a bonfire, but this fireplace, this fire structure with the wood, we either need to do it before Yom Tov, or if we're doing it on Yom Tov, we actually put the stone base after. So we sort of hold some of the wood up, hold some of the wood in place. Obviously not the whole structure because you don't have anything to build it on. But at least the first level, hold it up and put the stones underneath. So that way we've made it in an unusual manner. So
I think I understand what you're saying now.
Yeah. So that's what we'll do if actually making this fire pit or whatever we want to call it on Yom Tov. Right, and then and then we can cook on the fire as we might cook on Yom Tov on a gas just a side point, just me personally, it's not a halachic issue. Me personally, I recommend people not to leave their gas on for the 2 days Yom Tov. Because sometimes there's been situations where, God forbid, the fire's blown out during the night and everyone was sleeping.
Correct.
And then the gas still comes out, so it can be quite unsafe. In Israel, they have a little device that's quite popular in amongst the religious people that you can buy. It's quite reasonably cheap, but it has to be installed by a proper, someone's qualified to work with the gas, you're the plumber, and they actually install into the main, and it's a timer for the gas, and actually shuts it off before it goes into the oven or whatever point you install it, and that way you can have it go up before you go to sleep, so you don't have that issue.
But you can't physically turn it off then.
Right, you can't extinguish a fire on Yom Tov.
Okay. Now, I just want to make sure I read you right. That's
all. Now, if the fire went out on its own, you can turn off the gas. That's because the gas is normal fire. You can't turn off the gas extinguishing the fire. But if the fire went out on its own, you could turn off the gas. As I said, my concern, maybe it's just me being paranoid, I don't know, is that if, God forbid, people go to sleep with the gas stove on, then it could blow out, something can happen, and people aren't aware.
You're
And
absolutely right in what you're saying, because if the fire were to go out, all you would have is the gas, and
that's
now
right.
you become asphyxiated.
Right. God forbid. So, I've heard it happening. People I've said it to that they shouldn't leave it on. They tell me I'm being a little overboard.
Oh,
There's no breeze when the doors are closed. But anyway, it's my advice to people. So they say the best thing about advice is you don't have to take it. So I've given my advice, and if people want to take it on board, then
well,
please do.
I'm gonna say this to you, Rabbi. It is very good advice,
Oh,
because
thank you.
I've been with the fire department, and yes, I know what happens.
Yeah. So so anyway, that's the electric's not so bad, and one of the good things, today they've special made
But
warming
Rabbi,
trays.
if you can't extinguish the fire, how do
Yes.
you shut the gas?
Well,
If you
also,
shut the gas,
so I was
it
saying
will,
well, you can't. You got to leave it on for the today's yontif. But what I was just said before, if the fire happened to blow out on its own, or something happened that it's out, you could turn
that
the
you
gas off.
know, that
Yeah,
you
if you
know that
know,
the fire,
correct. If you
yeah,
know, you
because
can turn
if
the
you
gas
go
off.
to sleep and the fire goes out, then what?
Well, that was why I recommend to people not to leave their gas on.
Not to leave a flame to begin
Yeah,
with,
not
you
to leave
mean?
not to leave the gas flame on
Yeah,
over
for the
yontif
holiday.
because God forbid. I mean, hopefully it all goes
Yeah,
smoothly, but it worries me. So we don't do that in the house. We don't.
yeah.
Even though it might be more convenient to be able to cook in different things, but it makes me nervous. So anyway,
Can you leave an electric one on?
you can leave it on the whole yontif, so you're allowed to cook. So you can leave it. You can leave it on. You can even have it on a timer, which you cannot do on Shabbos. But
Yeah,
you
but
could on yontif.
electric is easier to
Yeah,
control.
yeah, it's safer. And
To a
and
point,
what
I'm sorry,
and then
Rabbi, but to a point, it is safer. You have to make sure you have nothing anywhere near where any of the flame may be, or the heater element.
correct. And so also, I mean, the actual stovetop. Also, I mean, my youngest kids aren't so young anymore, but for most of my I guess time growing up, well, my kids growing up, I've been afraid to leave electric hot plates on too. The actual stove plates to
Oh,
actually cooking temperature, because little kids in the house and different
yeah.
things, God forbid. So, but they have warming trays. The warming trays that you can have, and you can cook fish on warming trays. And if you cook things before yontiv, even if you, let's say, cook it 2/3, and then you put it on the warming tray, so it doesn't get that hot that is dangerous. But it's again, as was mentioned before, we want to make sure things aren't touching it, and but it's much more manageable. But an oven that closes is sometimes easier, especially if we've got a timer for it. So whatever works for you, just be careful. That's the main thing. Okay, so Zion, number 7. So you're allowed to sort like legumes, different beans and different things. Now, only the amount that you need for the day. Now, let's just explain the difference between this and Shabbos. On Shabbos, we can't do sorting. So, I mean, today when we buy beans and different things, they're normally already been, you just get beans in your bag. But if you would get from the farm, mixed in with the legumes, you're going to have maybe a bit of dirt, maybe a few rocks. They've just sort of collected it. So if we have these different things that we want and things that we don't want, on Shabbos we can't take out the things that we don't want. Now on Yontiv we can separate it, but only the amount we're going to use that day. But even when we do separate it, we can't use a sieve or a strainer. I have to do it by hand. Also, you can't put it in water with the intention that the waste will either float to the top or the food floats to the top. You can't separate like that. But you separate by hand. You like it mashul noyach uloyosa. And you pick out whatever is easier, meaning if it's easier to take out the stuff you're using, you can take that out. If it's easier to remove the waste products, you can do that. However, only what you use for that day, lo yosa, not extra. If it's easier to take out the waste products, you like it psulis, you take out the waste products. If it's easier to take out the food, you like it oichel, you take out the food, whichever is going to work, because it's for the sake of cooking. So it's an exception to the rule, and you're allowed to do that on Yom Tov. Okay.
Rabbi,
Yes.
is separating and choosing the same thing?
Yeah. So that type of thing, you're choosing what you want, and you're separating from what you don't want, or the other way around. So on Shabbos, you can only take the good from the bad. On Yom Tov, you can do either, whichever is easier. Right? Just by the way, not being able to take the bad from the good is the origin of gefilte fish. Right? Because when people would eat fish, you got bones in it, and you can't take they can't pull the bones out on Shabbos. So therefore, they made like a ground fish, so there's no bones in the gefilte fish. So if you want to serve a good bony fish, is some type of fish that you particularly like, but it's just a little bit hard to eat on Shabbos, then Yom Tov is a good time to serve it, because you can pull out the bones.
I thought gefilte fish was a special type of fish that didn't have bones. That's a joke.
No,
That's right. Yeah, it swims around in the ocean with a carrot on its head. So it's yarmulke. Right. Ches, number 8. Kemach shekava haya merukad ela shuroitze l'rakto shenis. Now you have flour that's already been sifted, but you want to sift it a second time. Now I've got to tell you honestly, I don't know the difference between flour that's been sifted multiple times, but apparently it's finer. It works better. Works better in the bread. So if you want to sift it a second time, you can either do it through a non-Jew, or you can do it in an unusual way. How would you do it in an unusual way? You hold the sieve upside down, and you do it that way. So to sift the first time, that we should have done before Yom Tov. It doesn't make the flour any better. So that really needs to be done before Yom Tov. I mean, sifting makes the flour better, but it doesn't matter if you did it yesterday or 2 days ago. There's no advantage doing it on Yom Tov, and therefore you can't do it on Yom Tov. So a second sifting right before you use it apparently is beneficial, but we either have to ask a non-Jew to do it or do it in an unusual way. And the same, matzahs duchos, and the same thing when sifting crushed matzah. The same thing, if we want to sift it, we have to use the sift in an unusual way, or ask non-Jew to it. Now, if you have flour that hasn't yet been sifted at all, now if you're going to do it, you have to have both. Only a non-Jew can do it, and the non-Jew has to do it in an unusual way.
Are you talking about matzah meal?
No, so now we're talking about regular flour, regular bread flour. No, before we're just talking about, I guess matzah meal. But we mentioned the matzah before, that was matzah meal. So even though you haven't sifted the matzah meal before, but since it's matzah meal, it's already had flour that's been cooked, that's considered like a second sifting. So sifting matzah meal is the same as second sifting of regular flour. But now we said first sifting, to actually sift the flour the first time, this you can't do on Yom Tov. Has to be, if you really need, it has to be done through a non-Jew, and the non-Jew has to do it in the unusual way. And you also can't take the waste products out of the flour. Going, for example, pebbles fell in it, right? Because all this could have been done before Yom Tov. So it should have been done for Yom Tov. So even the things we're allowed to do for cooking on Yom Tov are only things that can't be done or can't be done as well before Yom Tov. Matzahs, kesuchois, as a prim vagdolim osa. Even the matzah meal, to start separating between the large crumbs and the smaller crumbs, we can't do on Yom Tov. Okay, so we need to sift our flour beforehand. Now we get to baking. Tess, make a freshly baked chocolate cake on Yom Tov. So, Lisha Maturas B'Yom Tov, kneading the dough is permitted on Yom Tov. Right? Obviously, it's one of the malachas. It's forbidden on Shabbos, but freshly baked bread or cake or something is much better. So you're allowed to knead on Yom Tov. But even though you're going to make the recipe, nevertheless, you can't measure the flour. So when you bake the cake on Yom Tov, when you bake a cake on Yom Tov, you can't measure the ingredients to do the exact amount. Elo yikach b'omer das. You have to estimate a little bit because measuring is a problem on Yom Tov. Right, so we can't actually measure things to get the exact amounts. Exactly 2 cups of flour. So you
only need what you. So you only need what you.
Say again.
You only need what you need.
Yeah, well, you only really need what you need anyway. But even besides that, even what you need, you can't do exact measurements. Measuring is one of the things you can't do on Yom Tov. So you estimate. You put in roughly 2 cups. So how do you do that? I mean, practically, let's say you have your measuring cup, and if you're making it during the week, if you're making it during the week, what you do is you make sure that the scoop is full and not overflowing, because you want it to be exactly a cup, because you want the measurement. But when you do it on Yom Tov, you just sort of fill it up, and if it's slightly less, slightly more, you leave it and you put it in like that. Right, so you have to do it by estimation. The same with the sugar and everything. Right, and if you don't measure exactly, you have a little bit less or a little bit more, then you can even use the measuring implement to get it roughly, but you can't do it exact. So that is kneading. So we can put all the ingredients in, but we can't measure exactly what goes into the mix. Yud number 10. Batzek mechutach. You have this noodle dough, essentially. All right, you're going to use it. So you're going to cook it, but it's with a liquid. So yesh lolosh erev Yom Tov. This you should need before Yom Tov. Why? So noodle dough, if you're making farfel and lox and different things, if you make it a day early and let it sit, it tastes better. Now, I've got to tell you honestly, I don't think I ever made my own noodles, so I can't tell you the difference in taste between leaving it overnight, different things, but I'll take their word for it. Now, whatever reason, you didn't need it before Yom Tov. then Yalish b'yontiv alidei shinoi. Now you can knead it on yontiv, but in an unusual manner. So let's just, again, to make it clear, things that taste better when you make it fresh on yontiv, for example, fresh bread or fresh cake, that you can knead on yontiv like normal, the kneading at least. But things that do not taste better if it's a day old, or in the case of these, when it doesn't taste, it's not going to affect the taste. It doesn't make taste worse if it's a day old. Never mind this noodle dough, which is even going to taste better if it's a day or so old. That you can only knead on yontiv in an unusual way. So what's an unusual way? Tahainu, for example. Shim darkalalish al daf. If you normally knead it on a board, and you put a board down and knead it on the board. So instead, Yalush al mapakadoima, you'll knead it on a cloth or something similar. Similarly, cook food that doesn't spoil. So obviously certain things, especially pre-refrigeration, you couldn't make it too much in advance. It's just going to spoil. So you had to make fresh in yontiv. But if you have something that doesn't spoil, could go in, for example, Peiros Yavashim, dry fruit. So you should cook it on Erev Yontif. You make a dish with dried fruit, it's not going to spoil. Make it before Yontif. Anything that won't be affected by making it early, we should make it early. It's only what needs to be done on Yontif we can do on Yontif. Any questions, thoughts, comments?
On the noodles, when you make your own, you can put as much egg as you want, and you can put as little salt as you want.
So you're saying that it's even better because you get to choose the recipe.
Yeah, it depends how you like it, and if it's healthier,
Yeah, I'm sure if I made it, it wouldn't come out very well though. But it's but yeah,
There's a machine that helps you do it, but I don't know that you can use it on Yontif.
Probably not. I mean, I'm not sure what the machine is, but probably not. Probably not. If number 11. Isa Shlosha Yontif. You have a dough that you needed on Yontif. Now, mutar lahafish min challah. You're allowed to take the challah. Avol also the srafa, but you can't burn it. Okay, so let's go back a step. So when we make bread, we have a mitzvah to take, or originally the idea was to take a piece of the dough, and it's a gift for the kahanim. That's in exchange for their work in the Beis Hamikdash. It's one of the gifts that they get. And every time people made some bread dough or certain cake doughs, cake doughs that are runny, it doesn't apply to, but like a bread type dough, so certain kokosh cakes, different things like that, but it's actually that type of thick dough. So you have to take challah. You take this, the challah is the piece that you give to the kohen. Now, nowadays, everyone has come in contact with the deceased person, or they've come in contact with somebody who has been in contact with the deceased person. So therefore, the kahanim are tomei. They are not in a spiritual state to be able to eat the foods that were given to them as a gift, and therefore they can't eat the challah. So we burn it. I mean, most people today, what they do is they make the challah, and every time they take a piece, they put it in the freezer, and then all of a sudden, Erev Pesach, when we make our fire to burn the chametz, out come 63 pieces of little balls of dough. That was a challah we took every time we baked, and then they go to the fire and we burn it. But then, especially when they had wood burning stoves and they cooked on fireplaces, you took off the challah and you put it into the fire, and you burnt it. A side point to this is why by Ashkenazim the custom became to call the bread on Shabbos challah. Right? People think that challah means the braided bread. It's not the case at all. What happened is that during the week, the average person used to buy from the bakery. But Shabbos, it's special to do as much as you can yourself. So you had many people who bought bread during the week, but would make their own bread for Shabbos. Now, since they didn't make it regularly, they might forget to take the challah. So therefore, that bread we just started calling it challah. So everyone's talking about, oh, I've got to make challah. And just by talking about it, by saying I need to make challah, that reminded them that they had to take the challah. They had to take that piece of dough. So even though we are allowed to cook the bread on Yom Tov, the only burning or cooking that you can do is what's needed for food.
You mean baking.
Baking, right. But it's only what's needed for food. So this piece of challah that you're going to burn, you can't put into the fire, because even though it's cooking and burning and various things, but it's not for eating. It's for destroying, which we can't do. So we can't do that on Yom Tov. So I guess we'll stop here till tomorrow. Any questions before we finish up? No? All right.
That's
No.
frozen challah
So we'll see
burn.
everyone tomorrow, God willing.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Yes.
Rabbi, does
Yeah.
frozen challah burn, or you have to defrost it first?
Well, it'll burn eventually. So if you're waiting for the last minute, yeah, you better defrost it first. But don't defrost it too much, because you bring out 50 pieces, it'll have this massive raised,
Rabbi,
giant thing. But yeah.
Rabbi.
Yes.
Well, that's with hamotzi. What about mazanot? You do the same thing.
So if it's a bread type dough, then yes. Meaning when I say
Pizza,
bread
yeah.
type, I mean the texture. So not a runny dough, like many cakes are a liquid dough, or like pancakes, liquid dough. Like the type of dough that's bread. So mazanot bread would be the same thing. Most cakes are more of a liquidy dough. Also,
Thank you,
fried
Rabbi.
things. Fried things don't need challah. So if you're making donuts, actually has to be another exception.
Thank you.
Yeah, no problems. Have a great day.
You
Thank
too.
you.
Rabbi.
Thank you, Rabbi.
Bye,
Thank you, sir.
everybody.